opportunity to hold on. I just got the recording in progress. Give me a second. Okay. It's just a great opportunity to have the community engage with another community that needs to use our site temporarily. So if anyone is at Eastlake and would like to contribute to what's going on as we bring in Benteen to live there for 18 months, I'd love to hear from you, and we'll share that with my colleagues. I also want to share that the cone facility, there is a survey from the community that wants to know how to use cone and its future use. And I just want to respond back that Timor will be using the cone facility as it gets its upgrade for HVAC, along with some other additions, I guess is the right thing to say. I think everyone in City Council 5 understands that there's a need to address capacity with respect to the Jackson cluster, and I respect that. And I think we need to sit down and have a conversation about what that's supposed to be. Granted, Master's Facilities Planning is moving very forward and hoping to provide all that it needs to be said as kind of a recommendation by October. However, I do believe within our district, meaning District 3, and specifically District 5, we need to really have a conversation around what we want to see happen. Because, and I've said this multiple times, I think the CRIM facility is a really good swing space. And that we look at the cone facility as something much more important with the long-term vision. But again, that's just my opinion. It's certainly not where the community is headed. With respect to the Midtown cluster, there's certainly a lot going on. There's continued, I don't even know what the right word is. There's continued concern about the future use of Inman. However, as a board member, I need to be very clear. While I appreciate all the input that has been given, the recommendation from the board is that we move forward with a K5. And while I have heard a lot of feedback about if the K5 is the right solution or not the right solution, I appreciate it. However, whatever the Midtown community believes or does not believe, the administration has come up with a solution that they believe is right. It doesn't matter if I agree or disagree. What matters is the process that we've gone through as a community with respect to what other communities have had to go through to get to similar solutions. And that's where I stand. So anyways, I'm talking too much. I want to hear from y'all. I see that there's a bunch of stuff there's a couple of things in the chat. Let me see what's going on in the chat.
And also, Board Member Olympiadis, I do want to also let the stakeholders know that we do have Board Member Cynthia Briscoe Brown and Board Member Tamara Jones present on the call.
Which is great. Thank you, Keith. Thank you for recognizing my colleagues. Do my colleagues have anything to say?
Good morning. It's good to see everybody, and I hope you're having a good summer.
Likewise, good morning. Just happy to be here. I was here last month to hear everything, talk to folks, and so I'm happy to be here and to hear from everybody again.
All right. Do you folks have questions? And I'm looking at the chat, but just raise your hands if there's something that we need to talk about.
Yep. And so again, Board Member Olympia, if I may, before we begin with questions from the public, again, we have quite a few people into the community meeting. And so if you do have questions, please raise your hand. But we do ask that you do ask questions and get to your questions so that we can hear from everyone. We do set aside just an hour for this meeting. And so we definitely want to hear from as many as we can. So if everyone can raise your hand, we'll put you into a queue. And we ask that you just ask a direct question so we can hear from everyone.
Okay, let's see what's going on. I've got a chat here that I need better glasses for. Emily, are you with us? Emily Cooper.
Yes. Hey, Michelle. Yeah, I just
Hey,
wanted to
sorry.
no problem that sorry, I was coming off mute there. That Morningside has actually connected with Benteen several times over the past couple of years. So if you guys have any specific needs, please feel free to reach out, and we're happy to support as well. Even though we're not East Lake, we're still happy to help out.
No, that's great. Okay, I'll send you my contacts information. Who I asked to, anyways, he's busy. Yes, that's great. That's wonderful. Thank you. Anyone else? Any thoughts? I see a lot of people here who tend to have a lot of thoughts. Can y'all let me know what you're thinking?
Hi, Michelle. Can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Hi. I am a parent in Morningside and had a question about the grandfathering. I think I remember Travis saying there was going to be like continued engagement over the summer. So I didn't know if there had been any developments on that front in terms of who is included in that policy. And my situation is that I have a third grader who would be grandfathered, and then I have incoming kindergartners who I would like to have at the same school, but I don't know what the situation is.
Of course. And you sent me an email, and I apologize for not responding in good time. My understanding, and this is where I need clarification, because it is a K-3 block, if that makes sense, but I don't know where the K is on that block. I don't know if it's this K, meaning last year's K, or if it's this future K. But I hear you, because you're around the corner from me, correct? Yeah, you're around the corner from me. I just need to, and I'm sorry to say this, it is my fault that I've not responded back to you, but at the same time, July is kind of like I don't know, kind of a France month for APS. Yeah, I'm a bit of a Francophile, so I'll use that as an excuse. But yes, I owe you some stuff, and you are on my radar. And you're right. I don't know what the K cutoff is, and I appreciate your email telling me that your eldest and your twins all want to be together, and I understand that and appreciate that. So just give me a minute, and I will get back to you. I promise.
Great, thanks. I didn't know if there was like more focus groups or whatever. I had emailed Travis.
Yeah. I don't think we're quite there yet. I've sent a lot of information to the administration, just trying to understand what the K-3 movement is, and how we're going to make the new elementary school successful with this idea that families have the option to pick and choose, if that makes sense. This is something we've not done before, or at least if it's been done in other places, I need to go do my research, but it's not anything that we've ever done in APS.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. Oh, I see some stuff up here. Y'all are giving me stuff online or in the chat. Okay, there's somebody who's way ahead of me. What is this about? Dion, let me know what this is about. Can we just talk about it? Is Dion still online?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm at a state swim meet. I think Tamara knows our weekends are the same at Georgia Tech. Can you guys hear me?
Of course.
Okay. Wait, the first one, I guess, is the interim data, and the let's talk about that first. The interim data, from my understanding, the goals and guardrails was supposed to be discussed during the year so that we could modify things and not be released at the end of years. And I know you guys as board members asked in the fall when the first patch would be released, and you were told the spring, and then the spring came and went, and they didn't release the 3 sets of interim data from the MAP scores that were taken in fall, winter, and then spring till school was let out. Is that going to be changed for next year?
Okay, great question. Tamara, do you have any insights? I don't have any insights on this.
I don't. I
Yeah,
mean, I would
don't-
hope that
I think this
moving-
is please go ahead.
moving forward, when we start more attentive work on the student outcomes focused governance, which you'll see in our meetings, I would suspect that this will be like regular monitoring will be more part of the process. Cynthia, can you chime in?
Yeah, our August board meeting will begin to show the effects of our student outcomes focused governance framework on the agenda, which means that, and it's not going to happen overnight, but we will begin to refocus our agenda items on using the data to make sure that more and more of our board meetings adhere to that student outcomes focused governance framework. And of course, that uses the data here. That said, the administration can't use it until they have it and until they've had a chance to digest it. So to some extent, our use of it is governed, is determined by when we get it and how long it takes them to digest it and put it in the form that makes it adhere to our framework. I don't know when the milestone scores will be released. I don't know. I mean, that really is an administration question, but I think starting in August, you will see us begin to use those and relate that to our goals and guardrails.
Okay, so we have the MAP scores, which is the interim data. And I did listen in on your meetings when you were setting these up for goals and guardrails the last couple of years. And there's been a delay in releasing that. But releasing MAP scores almost a year after doesn't really help us it allows the parents to see what their child did, but if we can be an advocate at our school for change, for more tutors, or to see trends, from my understanding, that's what that interim data was supposed to look at. Just like attendance data, discipline data, some of that stuff for the ACEs, which I know you guys did some first reports in October, but I hope some of that is more easily accessible to the parents so we can see trends and not be surprised at the end of the school year with information or have to put open records requests in to see some of all of these goals and guardrails and great guidelines you guys are making to give an overall picture of what's happening at our school so that also our GO teams can then decide what to spend money on to help our schools. Does that make sense?
It does. Agreed. And we will, I will, and I think we all will commit to lift that concern up to the superintendent.
Okay, That would be
And-
great because, and I think a standard across all schools would be great because right now we're at the mercy of what our principals release. And that is very different in each school within a cluster and within each grade level across the district. Some principals are more transparent and timely and some are not. And it causes a lot of frustration because when we're asked to give feedback on go-team meetings about budget or we're told about problems at the end of the school year and concerns, we really can't advocate in an educated way.
And
Within
I
the
just-
limit, go ahead, Tamara. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, this came up yesterday in a meeting as well with the maize cluster. And I just wanted you to know that, it seems to be that people across the district were told to file open records requests to get that data. And that is one question that I'm going to be asking, how we can ensure that we don't have to go through a process like that to get the data that everybody needs. But your point is well taken.
Yeah, and that's what I think. If there is a minimum standard and timeline, that data, the ACE reports, or even a central database of the ACE reports that are presented, or the map data on the dashboard in a timely manner, then that will free up a lot of the staff and a lot of the frustration because it's just open and transparent, which leads to another one of your goals and guardrails about communication, timeliness, transparency, engagement. We're hitting a lot of those. So that's what I would ask to advocate. The milestones data was available in May, it was May. So that data is there. I know it takes time for them to digest, but I hope we can go back to the pre-pandemic timeline on when that data is released, because now we've had 3 years to kind of get admin and leadership under us. So I hope that doesn't take a year to release and start discussing about it. So that's all that conversation. Sorry, I'm taking up a lot of time. My second question is, we've adjusted some of the salaries, I know, for foreign language, for different foreign language, and done different bonuses. And also for some positions for special education, I believe some paraprofessionals and some other key positions like that are gaps. What I'm hearing, and Michelle, you can probably attest to this, but I'm going to give a voice to it, is that some of the other positions, PTs, OTs, speech pathologists, kids who need full-time nurses at schools have not been happening for the last 2 years because there is a shortage. And what we need to know is that there's a shortage for these health professions, like the school nurses across the district. And we ramped up the salaries for the school nurses and did some of the CARES funding and American Rescue Plan funding. I know that. But I think we need to really look at the salaries for those other positions. A parent reached out and asked what is their next step. They're exhausted at their school for the last 2 years. Some very interesting things. The emails have been sent. They're very frustrated. I know some of you guys have gotten some of those emails. So I think we need to look at those salaries, and I know that takes time. So we need to fill that gap in. And I sent them some of your policies on how in emergency situations, those gaps can be filled in and those hearings that they can request. I would just ask that you look at those other positions, because I know my husband's at the hospital. I'm a speech pathologist. I know what I can make right now at different things, and I can run around and go for salaries, but these kids only have a certain amount of time in school. We need to make this happen for them. They've lost 2 years of services to the degree they should get. And we really need to bring attention to this.
Thank you for that. And I'll take a second here, and since you mentioned transparency and communication and all of that stuff, just to let people know that for the last couple of months, I've been locked out of my Let's Talk account. So if people have tried to get in touch with me, the administration or the board administration has been, responding on my behalf, but I am back in it now. They've solved whatever glitch that was. And so I'm going to be going back through and responding personally to all the people who did, get in touch with me via Let's Talk, so that they know that I didn't just ignore them. So that's one. And then you mentioned the thing about funding. making sure that schools have the level of services that they need. And I will go ahead and say that one of the things that I've noticed from all of the feedback that I've gotten from people with respect to the Midtown, elementary school situation, there's a common thread that goes through all of these, which is concern about funding and about, it has raised an issue for me with the student success funding formula, where schools that are not Title I kind of, some of them like Morningside only gets around, and Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, around $8,000 per student. And so almost all of these schools spend almost their entire school-based funding on staff, on salaries.
Yeah.
Forcing them to fundraise for everything else. And so the prospect of losing students, that's what makes the fear go through, all the parents, is that they're afraid that their students won't have the level of service and the standard of, offerings that is necessary to have, a great education. And so I am hearing that. I'm hearing that loud and clear. I have been talking to some of my colleagues about it because I think it incentivizes schools to hoard students. Very large schools are the only way they feel like they can get everything that their children need. And so I'm hearing this loud and clear.
And just to be specific, I'm not talking about teachers, or like in elementary schools, you have to use SSF funding to choose to buy a security guard or not buy one. That's how that's funded.
Yeah, it's all of the above.
That's all the above. But it's also like a child who needs a full-time nurse at school. If the 3 or 4 contractors APS is contracting with does not have a nurse, what is the board's or administration's role in filling that? Because calling a parent and saying your kid can't come to school because we don't have a nurse and your child needs one should never be an option.
Yeah,
so, or your child doesn't get physical therapy this week, even though we have funding for it, because we can't fill that. We need to look at those specific salaries of those kiddos who need extra services. If you're talking about equity and equality, that's the same. Like we need to start making sure those kids are getting those services, and those salaries I have not heard are being talked about at all.
I understand your distinction, and I've made a note of that. Absolutely.
Because these kids the parents are being put in silos and are not getting the answers. And I think we pushed that far too long.
Deanne, can I chime in?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Parents,
I think that's a little bit of the hesitation about going to a new K-5 is exactly what Tamara brought up about losing funding and having less funds and trying to assess with the SSF what schoolhouses want or what they think they need, and bringing back to the board that there is a necessity to have definite or definitive, maybe definitive is a better word, definitive offers of what is
standards of service. Yeah.
What is needed in service. Thank you, Tamara.
And these services I'm talking about is not Midtown. My 2 questions, there's 3 board members on here, are for across the district, just to let you know.
No, Deanne, I totally agree.
Yeah,
I just
want to highlight those things. I don't believe that the security guard should ever be in the SSF funding for any school. No principal should have to decide to have a full-time security guard, especially in an urban city school, over having another teacher or over having
a nurse.
Exactly. Right.
So
thank you. I'm sorry to take up so much time. So the security guard.
You're great.
And I did send a let's talk to the security guard group and ask them, safety group in the spring, and ask them if this model was going to be looked at, because I believe the model is at the elementary school level, the principal has to decide with the SSF funding if they want a security guard and how much, how much they want them to work. And I only know that because of the case center. When we had the case center, we had an issue right before the case center opened, and we decided to do a little bit different with our security guard.
No,
And then
we
the
share.
middle school, I believe some middle schools have them, some don't. And then high school, they're given one. APS makes sure every school has one, and it is not in the SSF model. So
in the SSF model, let's just be clear, middle schools and high schools are typically guaranteed one unless they're using their funds differently. In elementary schools, Morningside was a bit of an anomaly and did choose to use their SSF funding to fund a security guard.
But that was because we had that scare with the FBI with the letter.
Yeah.
So let's say why. Yeah. So that's why we chose to have.
Absolutely. We had a shutdown shooting over. It was off of. Oh, come on. I won't remember the street, but it's around the corner. But yes, you're absolutely correct. And when we went to split campus, we used our officer to serve as split campus support, which many parents were concerned about. And you're right. There, being in an urban environment, there is a potential case to say that, yes, we need to have an officer at every school in our district, no matter where the school is. And especially in many of our schools that are not as, well, it doesn't matter in all our schools. Gianna, I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Yes, and split campus should have one at each campus if there is a split campus. Thank you.
Agree.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No worries. No, thank you for the response. Okay.
We have Waukesha. Yep.
Yeah, let's go with Waukesha and then we'll go with Deanne. Waukesha, what's going on? How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm great. I jumped on late because I thought this was at 10 o'clock. No worries,
No
Deanne.
worries.
Thanks for lifting all that up. I just have a question. So last night, the mayor, our past board member, Courtney English, had a meeting with the Forest Coast residents. And to my knowledge, once again, those residents are not gone. We actually have some of them living in hotels because they're waiting on the process. What the board did, and not all of you, a few of you, you voted to close a school down. Don't know where the funds went. The children may or may not go to Slater. I want to understand the logic of why would people vote to close a school down when all of those families were still in that community, and they, to this day, they're still in the community. They're not gone. And it looked like APS is possibly going to spend even more money transferring those students to APS schools from wherever they're going to be, because they are not situated. And I just actually saw the video last night, and I did post it on my Twitter, of the mayor trying to have a conversation and talk them through how they can move faster. But the truth of the matter is they are still there. And a lot of these board members voted to close that school down with those families still there. And it's very disheartening because you wouldn't do it nowhere else. There were no real community engagement. And I know because I'm the education committee chair, there were no real engagement with the community, with the parents. And to this meeting last night, I noticed there's like these little small meetings that pop up. I remember Katie had one and she said that it wasn't well attended. But that's because the communication is terrible. But I want, probably Cint can answer this since she voted to close it. Why would you guys rush to close a school when you guys new families were still there, but you went off the assumption of, yeah, they're probably, the mayor or someone said that they'll be gone by June the 15th, and you probably still got over 150 families still there. And now that they're living in hotels, who are going to make sure these families know about the McKinney Veto Act? Who are going to make sure these families know that APS can provide service to make sure that their kids have a stable education? Thank you.
Waukesha, I really appreciate your feedback. I think that's very powerful, hopefully for my colleagues. I wish, honestly, that the school board had a better relationship with what's going on with the city so that we could have better collaborated on how this is happening. And what I've learned over the past 2 months or 3 months, I guess 3 months is right, is that this has not been well handled, and is unfortunate. At the same time, unfortunately, it's a question of economics, and unfortunately, as a school district, we need to do better with when we were handled these very difficult situations and ante up and do what's best for children. And I am with you in the respect that we've not done right by this community, and it's very unfortunate. I will let Cynthia and Tamara speak as well. I'm one voice.
I'm happy to speak about this. For the past several months, a coalition of community organizations and city officials, facilitated by the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, has been guiding the efforts of relocating residents from Forest Cove. Households with school-age children have been given priority in the relocation process, with a goal of placing these households in new housing prior to the first day of school, which is August 1st. Let me say that again. The first day of school is August 1st, just so we have it out there and everybody remembers, to minimize disruption for our kids and our schools. That process has not gone as quickly as anybody expected. And the city, the coalition of community organizations and the city are stepping up efforts to both get families with kids moved before August 1st, and are also specifically engaging with families with children to make sure that they know that we have supports available and that we are part of this process, and that APS is working with Purpose Built and the community partners on supporting students during this transition. We as a board are expecting an update on that probably today. We were promised one by the end of the week, and this is Friday. So I expect we'll know more shortly. Waukesha, no, none of this has gone the way any of us would have wanted it to go. What has happened at Forest Cove has been terrible and tragic and inexcusable on so many levels. And we on the board have been watching it, I think, my entire time on the board. It honestly was part of the conversation when Courtney English, who was board chair at the time, formed our Affordable Housing Task Force to see what we could do to work with the community. And I see a chat question popping up right now. Can someone please explain what Purpose Built means? Purpose Built Schools is the purpose-built schools and purpose-built communities are arms of the organization which runs our Drew Charter School as a charter school, and also runs part of the Carver cluster as a partner school. And remember that the distinction between charter and partner is that partner schools are kind of a hybrid. They allowed us to bring in a specialist to lift up our most struggling, our most challenging schools back when the governor was threatening to develop the Opportunity School District and take those schools away from us, quite literally. So we have a contract with this organization to run, don't let me miss one, Tamara and Michelle, Thomasville Heights, Slater, and Carver STEAM.
Also Price.
And Price, I'm sorry. Yes, and Price. See, I knew I was going to do that. That's why I said, don't let me miss one.
You're sweet.
But anyway, to go back to Forest Cove, it doesn't help and it doesn't excuse anything that's happened there for years, but we're working on it.
Can I jump in here saying, I want to be fair because I have witnessed so many school closure. As an African-American mom in Atlanta public school, I was born and raised here from the west side to the south side. I have witnessed how so many schools have been closed. And I gotta say, we have came to the board for, I feel like it's been a year, and it may not have been 10 and 20 of us, but the 3, 4, 5 of us that came, we spoke every month at the board.
Waukesha, back up. You cut off for a second. So back up. You said 2, 3, 10 years. Back up, because you
No,
got
I know. I said it may not have been. It has been maybe a few of us, 3, 4, 5 of us. We have came to the board meetings and we have spoke and we have said that this was a terrible idea. And please look at the facts. We have witnessed school closures before. That's why we have came and we have said, hey, Purpose Built is not doing right by our children. We have been saying that before the contract was done. Every time this happened, we get the same tone. We know that they didn't do right. Let me tell you something. People are pissed in the city of Atlanta because crime is out of control. It is out of control because our kids are not getting the proper tools. And you cannot be here today and say we didn't do right. That's not acceptable for us. Something has to be done. I don't care if you guys have to reverse something. How about you step down? If you didn't make the right choice, step away, because this have happened time and time again. And we have witnessed that. And we get the same tone. We know they didn't do right, but we told you guys, go look at the board meetings, go look at the retreats, the committee. We told you guys, 1, Purpose Built is not doing right by the kids. 2, please do not close the school because that is not necessary just yet, because the family has gone. To your point, Cent, you have watched this the whole time, and that whole time they've been saying, we're going to close the school and we're going to move them. No, they're going to close the apartments and we're going to move the people. It has not happened. To this day right now, it still has not happened. It was so many families in that gym last night with a pop-up last-minute meeting with the mayor, probably because they got to give y'all a quote-unquote report today. There are families living in hotels. Do anybody know how they feel? Because I damn sure do. I know how it feels to be displaced and my children having to live with me in a hotel. And we talking about school is less than 2-3 weeks away, and I don't have a place to stay. I had a home. Yes, it wasn't the best, but I had a home. But these people came and said, we're going to move you. Not to mention, there's a whole application process that these families have to go through, and they're not even qualified for. I sit on House ATL committee, I know what these families see every day because they reach out to me. And we have reached out to you guys time after time, letting you guys know that, listen, this
Okay,
is not a good idea. And when I seen the meeting last night, I didn't understand how it's so many families still there and yet the school is closed. It doesn't make sense. We could have thought way better than that.
Well, one of the things, and I appreciate you raising those concerns. And I think one of the pieces that we have failed to look at too is, while the families that are being relocated might be getting a roof over their heads, they're losing their community, they're losing their support system. And that is something that, we really need to pay more attention to. I have asked the question in the last several months of, what happens if the families are still there come the beginning of school. And so I'm hoping that we get an answer that they have had a plan B or C, to address that, because there was the very real prospect, which you brought up, long time ago, that it might not move that fast. But all the assurances we were getting from that committee, the group that was put together, was that they were going to have them relocated. And I personally was one who felt very strongly that we should have kept the attendance zone the way it was to send a stronger message to the community, that they still had a community, that, we intended for the school to reopen, for the community to come back, and it would have sent a better message. But I think we do have to acknowledge what you're talking about, and just the trauma that the families are going to be going through, and making sure that we're supporting them.
I think that the trauma is an understatement, because at the end of the day, like Cint just said, she's seen this her whole time being on the board. So this is nothing new. And before all this started happening, in all fairness, no one was really speaking up for that school. Those contracts have failed our babies terribly. They have failed our children, and they can possibly not have a great outcome. Not to mention, to your point, they are being shifted every which way. These families are going all the way down to Union City. Did y'all know that? They not even gonna live in the city of Atlanta no more. That's okay with everybody.
Well, Keisha, it's not okay, but I think we all, well, let me just say this. For those of us like you and me and many of us others, I understand that we're pushing people out of the city, and that's not acceptable.
I do think.
I hope someone right this wrong, because this is like, this should be the last wrong that ever has a Black and brown children on the South Side in APS. I hope this wrong get wrote out. It don't ever happen again. And I hope you guys put in the proper resources, because the meeting we had at Thomasville Elementary, we asked that please let these families know about the resources, just in case they are shift or put in between, like in a hotel. Make sure they know about resources that can help their children be stable. Because remember what the superintendent said, if they're somewhere else, they have to go to school there. Where if you're in a hotel, you're homeless. And that falls under McKinney Veto Act.
Correct. Cynthia, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with your last comment about making sure that that the families know that there are resources and how to access those, and we need to make that as easy as we possibly can. And by we, I mean APS, I mean the community foundation, the city, whoever. Every single one of us need to work together to do that. I do think we need to be careful not to conflate several issues here. I hear you on your concerns, and I know, Waukesha, there are longstanding concerns about the partnership with Purpose Built. I do feel like that is somewhat of a different issue from the immediate issue of what to do about Thomasville Heights. That decision was made jointly between Atlanta Public Schools and Purpose Built. There was no discussion or dispute. Everybody was on the same page for that, because in this specific situation, it didn't make sense academically, in terms of student support or financially to continue running a school for just a handful of students, a few dozen students. So I do feel like while the question of whether the partnership concept is or was a good idea, that internally is different from the decision on this particular school. And both of those are different issues from what's going on in the larger city community about Forest Cove. I think at this point, we probably need to wrap up this discussion, Michelle, because I see we have other comments.
Yeah, there's two other
Before you go-
things, and most people
they're
know
not
I'm not committed to 10:30. So, Waukesha, wrap it up for me so we can get
Well,
to Deanne and Sarah.
Wait, let me say this. Extend
That's
me
what
the
I
same,
said. Wrap it up.
no, extend me the same courtesy that you extended to Dion, please and thank you. Now,
Of
all I
course.
want to say is, at the end of the day, they're not different. They both have failed our babies. The contract that oversees those schools and y'all decision to close the school without having proper information, or can we just go back old school and say, just use some common sense? We know what's going on in the city of Atlanta. Why not think this through and say, hey, how fast can they move these families? Let's think about April. Can they move these families by June, May? Can they move these families by June the 15th? You guys, that was a simple, no, they cannot. We don't have to let them tickle our ears. That was easy common sense. They cannot do it. And yes, they gave 1.5, 1.7 million to Greater Community, who is third partying that out to somebody else. Y'all heard about that? Okay, and yet our babies are still not getting what they need. We have to be fair. We talk about equity. What was the equity piece for Thomasville? Where
Waukesha, you are correct.
Oh, hold on, Tamara. Where was that piece? I asked for that. I specifically asked Ms. Baker, hey, did you do a study for Thomasville like how you did for the other schools? Did you do? No, she did not. So we see this administration not being fair, not going by this word equity when it comes to the Black and brown kids and the poor community. We knew what was going on. We knew that those families were being pushed out, and we came to you guys and we voiced our opinion. Every month we came to the board meeting and we spoke up for those families. Yes, it is stressful and it's trauma. No, cannot make every meeting as a resident, because y'all know how many meetings they've been telling these families to come to. Like, only thing we had to do in this conversation is use common sense. And to the contract, which is no different, they get a lot of money. And what have they produced for our babies? Let's look at the whole side, one side of the cluster. Absolutely nothing. And crime in our area has spiked out of control. Families have been pushed out of their community. And now there's no kids here. So we got a building that's sitting up here empty when these kids can be going in that building on August the 2nd. That's absolutely unacceptable. And for everybody who voted to close that school, I ask you to step down right now, because this need to be your last time failing these children in Atlanta Public School.
But you are right that we need to do right by all of the children and by all of the families and the community, no matter what the issue is, whether it's the academic delivery within the school or how they're being handled, with respect to their housing. And we have to do a better job. And I will help with that.
Waukesha, as always, I appreciate your feedback and your comments. Deanne, who's got her hands up, and then we're going to go to Sarah, and we'll Keith and Pierre, we're going to extend as we normally do. We're just going to take a little bit more time. We're not done. Nobody's getting cut off at 10:30. Deanne, please.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for holding this call. Thanks, Cynthia and Tamara, for joining as well. I will say I'm left a little bit speechless after that, so I don't want to take up much time.
Take up as much time as you want. I think what you're learning is the district is in a different space than Midtown.
Yes, and my heart goes out to them, and I think cluster APS wide, if there's anything that us as Mary Lynn can do to help, we would love to help. My heart breaks for those families. On that point, I have a couple things, questions that I will ask in a different forum, but I think more to Waukesha's point and more to speaking as a representative of my community. I think if you guys are going to continue on with your proposal as is, there are a lot of outstanding valid questions and concerns I think that our community has. I'm not going to speak for any other community, but what I will say is lacking.
And Deanne, I don't mean to shut you down by any means, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but will you introduce yourself? Because we have basically 30 folks on here, most of whom may be in District 3, but a lot of whom are not.
Sure. I am the Mary Lynn PTA president for the 22-23 school year. Our PTA recently met and formed a resolution just requesting that Inman Park not be removed from the Mary Lynn attendance zone. That came from a lot of communication from our parents and all of our different, we have 3 different neighborhoods that are comprised of Mary Lynn. That's Lake Claire, Inman Park, and Cameron Park. And we have a lot of residents with a lot of concerns. And I think when you talk about your children, they are the most important thing in your world, from the moment they are born until the moment that you pass. I have a 26-year-old who I still worry about every day. So when you make changes to their future that leaves unknowns, you really touch people's hearts and their worries, their fears, the worst part. And we have parents who work that can't come to these calls. They're during work times. We have parents who can't look at everybody's Facebook pages to find out when meetings are being held. So I think the one thing I'd like to say is if there is an opportunity to meet with the board at a lower community level to talk about the concerns that we have as a community and how those things would be resolved, I think would be a great way to bridge the gap and close, the concerns off if the plan stays as is, because our community is affected. Tamara talked about losing community and losing your support system. That happens anytime you remove, an entire neighborhood from the school. So I think if we can come together maybe outside of this call and figure out a way to communicate from the board to the school directly in this so that you can hear our community directly instead of having let's talk calls with 15 people from Morningside, 10 people from Spark, and 2 people from Mary Lynn. That is my ask here is, and again, this can be offline or just something to think about, but from now and going forward, how can we do that? Because I just was out of the country. I just got back from visiting my son and found out about this call last night through, another party. So I don't even have direct firsthand knowledge. We all, volunteer our times to do this, and we have other jobs and other things that take up our time. And so I would just ask that we find a better way to communicate and meet at a lower community level so you can hear concerns and people can feel that they're being heard, and then have their concerns addressed, whether they like it or not. At least if they have an opportunity to ask questions and get answers, then people tend to feel heard and have a little more understanding and patience with decisions that may go against, what their desires are.
Thank you, Deanne. I just wanted to appreciate you and the PTA. And I completely agree that, people all across the city just feel lost. They feel like they don't know how, when, where to engage with their board members in a way that is, down on the ground and fair and equitable, like you were saying. And so one of the things that we're doing on the board development committee is starting to explore, along with the policy committee, how we can set up something, a process that is a little bit more predictable, understandable, that utilizes our structures like PTA, which has a great way of, conducting meetings and making sure that, you keep a meeting going in order and you have, parliamentarian and, but that it's on a regular cadence and that it's understandable, people can predict it, put it on the calendar and know that their voices are going to be heard. And I really would hope, the PTAs, all over the city, the PTOs, the GO teams, our cluster advisory teams, our, alphabet groups, can, start to weigh in on the kinds of interactions that they would like to see happen with the board, so that we can have a broader, more predictable, more robust engagement strategy between the communities and the board.
And I see Paula Cooper-Smith and I think a couple of others on this Zoom who are involved in the Atlanta Council of PTAs, and encourage the Atlanta Council to reach out. Let's talk about how specifically how we can work together to help that happen. Paula, I'm looking at you, even though your picture's not up. I'm looking at you. There you are, in hopes that maybe we can talk about that as between the board and the Atlanta Council.
My camera was off because I am at work and tuning in while I'm here at work. Thank you, everybody. Atlanta Council is coming back and we are having our first membership-wide meeting for our members. The Atlanta Council will need to approve its budget and get the training needs and pulse of the community on August 18th. I will be putting that out to our local unit PTAs. We have a lot of work to do to come back and be one of the structures that Tamara mentioned. I do want to say to everyone here, one of the reasons I'm off camera is because people like Deanne, Dion, and Waikisha are amazing leaders in 3 different school communities. And I do feel that one of the reasons I ran for Atlanta Council of PTAs is that sometimes voices like theirs can be so deeply discounted when they have seen for a very long time through quite a few children and schools the things that are at issue. And I believe that we all have to do a lot more to hear these women and to hear these mothers and to hear the commonalities. There is a common thread between a Mary Lynn PTA president and a Thomasville mother advocate and Atlanta Council co-member. They are saying the same thing, which is we need to all work together to build trust, because as Deanne said, our children are everything. They keep us up at night. Sorry. I just appreciate hearing the advocacy. And now you know why I have my camera off. our parents, this is 23 years of hearing mothers say the same thing. And Waukesha does it better than I do. But I really do hope that we can all pull together and actually hear the families for a change, and not through politics and not through the votes, either up or down. It isn't that simple. But I do appreciate Tamara's recognition of the need for our structures to return to our schools, and I pledge to assist everyone, every PTA and every PTO. There is no division. Whatever everyone needs, I'll put my name in the chat. Sorry to cry. I'm gonna come off camera now.
You're fine, Paula, no worries. I think we all feel the same way. Sarah, let's wrap it up. Tell us what's going on.
Hi, and I'm glad to have been able to be here today. I just wanted to raise something to elevate this, and I know we'll have to bring this also to APS Central Office. But given all of the data that we keep seeing about the mental health and wellness of our students, that was pre-pandemic and only worsened through the pandemic, with what we're seeing and how concerning it is for our youth, and a lot of it. There's a lot of concerns about the anxiety our children have for a variety of reasons. But one thing that's been brought to my attention and others is just with the recovery program, the excessive testing that's happening and what that does to the stress for teachers and also for the students. And I wanted to elevate to you all to be talking with the central office about revising the testing part of the recovery plan. Last year, I believe there were 3 different phases of the MAP testing in the beginning, middle, and end of the year, and looking for some relief for our teachers and faculty and students from some of those expectations, given all that's going on, and allowing the teachers to have more time and flexibility with what they're doing and caring for our students. And it doesn't help the mental health and wellness. I know folks want data. There was a lot of data collected last year. Wouldn't it be possible to just collect data at the end of the next year? There's got to be a better way than all of all of that time, all of the disruption to the schedules that are happening for every cluster in the district, in APS as a result of the testing, and really how disruptive it can be, how stressful it can be for all parties involved. And it seems like there should be an option for people going back to the table and thinking, how can we relieve some of this pressure? We need to hear from the local teachers and principals about it more at the central office, and get their feedback and buy-in more on what should be the right way to proceed, instead of just using the plan that was created for 3 years at the end of the pandemic and sticking with it no matter what. And so I don't know if you've heard from others, but it's something that came up at the end of the school year and some of the community conversations I was in, and I wanted to make sure that it was brought to your attention and there would be some opportunity for follow-up on it.
Of course, and I appreciate that. Sarah, MAP is something that is relatively new to the district with respect to trying to gauge I'm not even going to come up with the right word, just to try to gauge progress, I guess is a bad way of saying it, but just try to gauge where the district is headed. And I appreciate you pointing out the fact that it's stressful on children. I would agree on that. Is there something out there that we as board members need to read about, what's a better practice? Because I believe that the district, and again, where I don't mean to be dismissive, but where we live and what the whole district has to go through, we're trying to understand how to educate children at the end of the day. And while I believe that there's some very foundational things that we need to do that we're not doing, I don't know how to make that difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think
Oh, go
One of
ahead,
the
Tamara.
things, if I could just jump in,
Sure.
one of the intents of MAP, okay, so MAP was not really intended to be used for accountability purposes. And I think that, you know, everything we've done in the past has been so accountability driven, you know, that it, you know, has stress accumulated around it. MAP is more of a, or at least my impression of it was to be able to facilitate differentiated instruction so that the teacher would know, oh, you know, Chloe, you know, didn't learn the properties of triangles, you know, in 4th grade, you know, and she's in 5th grade now. And so, you know, I need to catch her up on the properties of triangles, if that makes sense. That I think, and I hope, is where that is moving, and not so much of, you know, taking the temperature, you know, of APS and or a school or a cluster and trying to diagnose it.
I think that
I appreciate that feedback, Tamara. Sarah, I apologize for cutting you off. I appreciate that feedback, and I think we're all kind of on the same base here on trying to understand where we're headed.
And I do think MAP was intended that way, but when it's being used, and I didn't get everything written down before I got on this call, but the way it's being used, though, I think is maybe not consistent with that. And if everybody took it at the end of, you know, later in the year, I think it was actually, it might have been February or March, then there is data for the next school year. Let's not have the kids retest again in August and spend a whole week with that. And, you know, and I think to your question, Michelle, is there's lots of data about standardized tests are not the way, right? And our teachers are doing, I mean, our work, I mean, gosh, everybody knows how much they've been asked to do above and beyond and so many different things for the last few years that the, you know, what's tied to the standardized testing and the recovery plan seems excessive. To keep doing it every year, if it's going to be the same cadence as last year, it's just simply too much on everyone. And there's probably, and it doesn't mean, I'm not suggesting replace it with something different than MAP. I'm saying drop some of the frequency because it's too much time and it takes too much learning and it's adding to the stress. And so many of the schools are trying to do so much because of all the concerns we have on the social and emotional wellness issues that are just as important as the academic issues.
Yeah.
And there's no give, and something's got to give. And this is a space that it can give. A lot of data was collected. They can change, changes can be made. And I just wanted to raise it so that there's not kind of, we made a plan 3 years ago. I believe some of it's tied to federal funding with the CARES Act and some of the COVID funding. It doesn't mean it has to stay the same just because we made the plan what we thought was best, and that we revisit it and think about what's best for the health and, you know, the health of our students and faculty very much.
I just want to be clear. I don't think, and I respect, I get a lot of feedback on how we use CARES. I'll go back, don't quote me on this, but I'll go back and make sure. I don't think our CARES funding was used to fund MAPs. I think we were looking at MAP as a way to kind of what Tamara was saying, but to your point and my point as well, we didn't want it to be a trigger for like every trimester to have this thing come up. I think we were trying to use it as something to help us try to balance where we were going forward. Obviously, the administration needs to look at something a little bit different, that's a little bit softer, a little bit more holistic, a little bit more humane, because at the end of the day, our kids are our kids, and I think all of us want them to be good human beings and not what I said years ago, and I worked for Coca-Cola years ago, but not Coke bottles that are in like a production line just getting filled up and moving forward. We want something a little bit different. And I'm sorry I'm not more articulate around that, but that's just kind of the black and white of the way that I see it. So I really, really appreciate your feedback on this. And it's something that we really need to look at because I was a huge fan of MAP. when the district decided to bring it in. And I appreciate this feedback and offering it to the administration that it's not working in the way that I would have expected it to, or in the way that it should be used. And I'm not going to use COVID as an excuse, but it typically is a huge excuse. And Sarah wants to jump in. So jump in, Sarah.
Well, I just want to mention, Michelle, I'm not suggesting we replace MAP necessarily. So I just want to be careful, because it sounds a little bit like, from what you're hearing, is, revisiting MAP. My point primarily is there's simply too much testing. So going to find something else and have it be done and implemented in the same way. Okay. And then the other piece is, I think some of our principals I think some of the teachers have good sense of what would be the best thing, and getting their voices truly engaged in this and hearing from them directly. I trust our teachers that have worked so hard and have been asked and put on the front line to be a better voice and representative than myself on this. And they need to be there needs to be some focus groups with them about this, and what should be the right cadence, what's the right tool, because there's all these other requirements too for testing. And lastly, I didn't think that COVID funding was used to pay for MAP, but I did believe that in the plan that had to come up for using the CARES funding, there had to be a plan, and all these different things were part of it. And so this cadence for the recovery of having 3 different tests, 3 testing periods, having all this data, seemed to be one of the conditions of having CARES funding. And I could be wrong. And I'll stop there and go back.
You're good. I don't know if you're right or you're wrong, but do you feel as though your principals are not being heard by administration?
Absolutely. I felt that way for the last 3, since COVID began. I've spoken directly about this multiple times.
I think don't get me wrong. I love all your feedback. I've taken notes, but that's the biggest takeaway.
I think it's important that on that point, I brought this up when I worked with the We Demand Safety group. I've brought it up separately in different letters and conversations I've had directly with Dr. Herring. I think that there are principal engagement forums. They are not facilitated in a way to get honest and transparent feedback from the principals in a safe way, that they feel that they can speak freely and will be heard and not retaliated against. And I also think that that there is always more to be done for central office staff to get out into the schools. There's probably never enough to get out into the schools, away from the central office, and hear from folks. Would love to see central office staff rotating into the schools in a way that is not intrusive, but is really learning what's happening. Some of the things I hear suggested from central office staff seem impractical to be implemented in the schools. And there just seems to be a very large disconnect between the administration and what's really happening in schools and what needs to be done. So thanks.
I think that's really great feedback, and I appreciate that. And I don't mean to dismiss our previous conversation or the earlier conversation. I think all that's good, but those are the points that I think as board members, we need to address with the administration. Sarah, thank you so much. I've got another Sarah on here. Let's go.
I'll go quick. Thanks. So I was actually, personally, I do understand from listening to what Tamara was saying too, about like, we do need some of that standardized testing so that the teachers know like which areas really to focus on. But some of my feedback was actually around, it just prompted, as the other Sarah was talking a bit, was around that extra 30 minutes of time that they have, which I think was part of the CARES,
that is correct. That's elementary school, extra 30 minutes of CARES. Yes.
Gotcha. So and this is word on the street, I don't know if this is a rumor or not, but my understanding is that all of the elementary kids are required, if they are not meeting one-on-one or in a small group with a teacher during that time, to be on their tablets doing some educational games of sorts.
I don't know if that's true or not.
And that there's some tracking of sorts, like that, just make sure that we're using the software program. I was just raising this more as like, if there's a way that we can really trust our teachers to determine how best to use that 30 minutes of time. The kindergartners, for example, they may need that time to be running around and playing outside, right? They missed out on that social development of their 2-year-old, 3-year-old time, right? Whereas, the 3rd or 4th graders may really need that time to focus more on what skills they missed out on. So I just think, I'd love us to just kind of be leaning more on our teachers and our staff to understand how to best use that 30 minutes.
That's so interesting.
It is
no,
interesting. I hope I'm wrong.
I just want to be, I want to be clear. My colleagues are here to help me, but that 30 minutes is left up to the administration of that elementary school to figure out what is the best way to use it. And it's interesting to hear that in your school, you believe that they're doing it one-on-one for kids who may need the extra 30 minutes as opposed to kids who may need more instruction for that 30 minutes.
I think if they're not with the teacher, like in a small group, they're using tablets versus like if the teacher felt like, you know what, as a whole class, let's spend 30 minutes focusing on these skills. I don't, and again, this is hearsay. It's kind of word on the street, right? So I know you're recording this, so don't hold
No,
this
it's fine. No worries. No worries.
I'm
just saying, I think,
wanted to raise it.
I
found
think different schools use the 30 minutes in different ways.
Gotcha.
But I appreciate the question and I stuck it down there and I'll ask. Because we do allow a tremendous amount of flexibility with our schools. And there may be schools where 30 minutes of one-on-one time on a tablet is okay while we're trying to build other students up, as opposed to schools where we need that additional 30 minutes to really make sure that kids are getting what they need. Does that make sense?
Totally understand. And my other thought, just real quick, was just around like some of the Midtown, movement, and like, is this the right time? I've sent emails. I haven't quite heard back from anybody, but like, is this?
Sorry,
right
if I haven't
time?
responded back to you, I apologize. I will do my best.
Yeah, is this the right time to be, making these changes? Are there other things that we can be exploring? Right? Do we have capacity issues at different areas where we can be thinking about how to use Inman to incorporate as part of the bigger picture? So it was just kind of raising that as well. I know that you're all deep into this topic too.
So when you say using Inman to explore into deeper issues, I apologize.
Yeah,
what exactly do you mean?
Like we hear that the high school is approaching capacity, right? Like, have we thought about using Inman as perhaps an 8-9 academy or something that could we can have more flexibility or different options to help alleviate the high school concerns.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate your feedback on that. As you may or may not know, Midtown just had an expansion. And then, as you may or may not know, there are other properties within the Midtown cluster that are not being used for Midtown educational use that I think are a bigger question or a bigger conversation for the master's facilities plan. And even though we are moving forward with the master's facilities plan project and looking to kind of consolidate what we want to do as a district come October, it does not dismiss the anticipated need for Midtown to continue to have capacity issues, if that makes sense. So with respect to what I would say with respect to Inman and where we're headed, and I'll be completely transparent, I have no issues with the 4-5. I have no issues with the split campus. I have no issues with a K-5, but our immediate need is elementary school capacity. What thank God we've built out is some buffer with respect to Howard. What we've also created is some buffer with respect to Midtown. What we need to continue to do as a community is have a conversation and say, how are we going to utilize the rest of the properties that are within our cluster to either augment where we want to go or tell communities we need you to go to other clusters, which our other clusters are North Atlanta, which we can talk about, Jackson, which we can talk about, or Washington, which we can talk about. But these are larger conversations that need to be had. And
So I can, if I could. Sorry.
Yeah, Tamara, I'll let you chime in. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in, Sarah, and say that, you know, back in, I would say 2018, 2019, this conversation's been going on for a long time.
Oh, I know.
And you know, those alternative grade configurations were explored back then. The one that got the most traction there for a while was the idea of doing a 5-6,
yeah,
and then having a 7-8-9, right? But that one was ultimately, you know, there were logistical issues with respect to that from the administration, and they just, for what for a variety of reasons, decided they didn't want to peel 9th grade out of the high school.
Yeah, it wasn't just logistical. There were the biggest thing that came up was educational.
Yeah, they didn't want the 9th grade out of the high school. So that got a lot of traction. You know, that had a lot of buy-in from
parents too,
all the different school communities. But just it didn't work for whatever reason. So that, I just wanted you to know that they have explored that pretty thoroughly.
That's great. I actually wonder if it would just be really helpful for us. And I know you have to scale, right? You got how many kids? 5,000 kids, right? And I appreciate the opportunity to scale, right? Like if there's a way that, you know, you could come forward with like, we've explored these. This is why we decided not to do it, right? From an educational perspective, what was it, right? I'd love to know, just from like a data perspective. You know, was it that the kids couldn't take, if they were in 9th grade, they couldn't take the 10th grade classes? How many kids did that impact?
Yeah,
was there a way to
because once you get to high school, you're taking, you know, different kinds of electives that you have kids from, you know, multiple grades, you know, that are involved in those. And also the way the schedules work are, you know, are a little bit different than they work in the middle school. There was just a lot of concerns about the offerings that would not be available to 9th grade students if they were not in the high school.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just think sharing that with the community would probably be really helpful too.
Okay.
I think that's all I have. Sorry, I didn't mean to go so long.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Dion?
Two questions, two-part, hopefully not as long. One is, can we get an update on what's planned for COVID in the schools? I know the presentations ended. Dr. Lovett has left and took another position. In our cluster, we had a high proportion of kids screening, and what happened, asymptomatically screening, and what's happened is we tend to have more full classroom quarantines as late as May, including a letter that was sent to 6th grade that they shouldn't come to school because of so many classes having COVID. So the question is what is going to be the screening accessibility in school? What is the staff going to be mandatory and students be mandatory? And who is the authority who is mandating these quarantines? Because I think that was one of the biggest concerns, is many of the parents who were getting quarantined were trying to figure out who was actually mandating that they weren't allowed to come to school in May 2022. And then the second question is on personalized learning, if I can ask you that.
Okay, so on the COVID bit, I don't know the latter part of your question, so I'll figure that out. Maybe my colleagues do, but on the earlier part of your question, kids can still sign up to be tested once a week.
So they're going to be offering testing once a week in schools?
Yes.
And then will it be mandatory for teachers?
That, Dion, again, that's the latter part of your question. I don't know what the staff is going to be required to do or not do.
And I will tell everybody needs to go back in and update your consent forms for
that's it. Either you consent or you don't. And consent is optional, so you can consent or not consent with respect to the students. With respect to the staff, I'm going to have to ask. And Tamara's right. You have to go back and fill out your form if you want them to get tested weekly. And if you don't want them to get tested weekly, whatever, whatever. With respect to staff, I don't know.
Okay, will that information be shared at the next board meeting so that it's clear?
Of
Because
course.
the information that is
I'm
on
putting
the
it-
website
Dion,
is,
I'm putting it in my
still
notes
old.
right now.
okay. And then also who the hierarchy is when we are told that our child has to quarantine in 2022 for 2 weeks. Because we are a highly asymptomatic screen cluster, we tend to have more cases, which means we have more classroom shutdowns.
I'm sorry, walk me through that one more time.
Because we are signed up for more screening, our cluster is. What happens is whoever is quarantining, closing down whole classrooms more than other clusters. So example, Mary Lynn had classes that were closed down in May 2022, so did SCAR. And then in Howard, they sent home a letter saying that there were cases in 6th grade and that parents should consider not sending their kids to school the last week of school.
Okay, I got you.
So I think that what's happening is some people are sending out messages that might not be the message in 2022. And then some parents don't know who the authority is. I'm saying that their kid has refused school because another child contact to confirm. I think some people are abusing authorities. Some people are using old language. Some people are using old guidelines. So parents just want to know, what is the process now and who is the person that's making these decisions? Because it is not uniform across the district.
Okay, all right.
Two kids in class in Midtown cluster come up, screens, the whole class is quarantined. 2 kids in another cluster come up, same school, same classroom, the whole class is not quarantined. So parents are getting frustrated with that. Second question, the personalized learning, which Howard was in wave 1 of that rollout, which parents really don't understand what personalized learning is and what that looks like and what that means for schools. I know Morningside is now in wave 2 and it's going to be implemented at Morningside, but we've heard nothing about it. I actually watched one of the state of clusters in another cluster and figured out there is a whole rollout and what personalized learning actually is. I think the word is a fancy word that people are using right now, but there is a rollout and there are choices administration at each school can make, but parents and teachers are not being told that. So again, it looks different. So at Howard, we had Amplify for ELA and math, and the kids were not engaging in person with teachers or peers, and were spent a lot of time this last year on their computers. That's what personalized learning was with the new curriculum Amplify, where that's how they chose to do the personalized learning. Now with that, a lot of data was collected because it's all on the computer. But again, we weren't given that data. We have no idea what it shows, but the kids weren't given feedback on their work. There were minimal books, minimal writing opportunities with feedback. I know we're moving into a more technology world, but some of those things still have to happen. The engagement, the conversations, the book reading, the talking about things out loud. We're seeing that with the intervention and enrichment period. My daughter spent 30 minutes every day last year on a computer doing math in 3rd grade during her enrichment period. So I think we really need to assess what this looks like with all the computer time and find a better balance, especially in the Midtown cluster is the cluster I can speak about.
I appreciate all that feedback. Honestly, I don't really know what to say. I don't really know what to say other than the fact that I've taken some notes and I need to talk to the administration and try to figure out where we're headed. Because you should be informed about what's going on at your school or at your schools. And And if you're not, that's concerning.
And there is only one website, one web page called Personalized Learning in APS, and it has one diagram on it and a paragraph. So for this new thing that we're rolling out for all of APS, personalized learning, I think we need to discuss what is that, what does that mean, and what does that look like for all of the kids across the district, and what are options that you might see at different schools. So Go teams and parents can give feedback as well as teachers, because the one website is not enough. I actually found a whole video on Fulton County and what that looks like. And it actually looks like exactly at the high school level what my daughter did all last year using Amplify in her math, which is being on a computer all day long.
Interesting. Okay. Yep, we're using Amplify. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So that's great feedback. And let me see where we're headed.
Yep. So Board Member Olympiadis, I think we're at a point where we provide closing remarks.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, Keith, because we're a little over time, and I appreciate you always giving me that leniency with your time. I'm excited that everyone's here. I'm excited to hear your voices. I appreciate the feedback. We've got a lot of work to do. We will have another meeting on the third Friday of August, and I will continue these. Keith, you chime in. It's been very informative, not just for the board, but for the administration with respect to this. And I apologize that I didn't do this sooner and just took on individual calls and tried to kind of cobble up my thoughts and put them to the administration. I think this is much better. I think this is a better forum. And I appreciate all of y'all being here. It doesn't matter if you're in District 3 or not. I think a lot of people think that this is some sort of District 3, some sort of, platform. It is not. I serve on the Board of Education as a board member for the entire district and want to hear from everyone. So I appreciate all board members always, and I appreciate the community always, and the greater community, not just my own. Tamara's still with us. I think Cynthia dropped off, but Tamara.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you also for being here and for all of the ideas about, and concerns about engagement and how to go about doing it in a way that's more inclusive and more comprehensive. And I share Michelle's concerns with, very, very difficult to have small meetings that are usually issue focused, because you really are concerned about not getting, the input from, a larger group of people. And so keep your ideas coming about ways that you would like to be more engaged, have it be more inclusive, and, be that safe space to raise concerns and to talk with each other, because I think it's also extremely important for people in the communities to be able to hear from each other always. And there is, I tried to save the chat, but I don't have a way to do that. So there's a question of whether this chat will be saved so that we can distribute some of the information, because I know I dropped my my APS email address in there and my phone number for people. So, but now my Let's Talk does work. So again, so those are 3 different ways that you can get to me. And I'm sorry again for anybody that tried to contact me through Let's Talk in the last couple of months, because I've been locked out.
Hey, no worries. I've had bigger issues. Keith, we've recorded this, so the chat's recorded, correct?
Correct. I want to say yes. When you record, I think the chat.
Yeah, the chat should have its own little, I don't know what that is. It should have its own little whatever.
Once the meeting is over, I can verify. and just,
Okay,
fill out
well,
this-
whatever we need to do, but you've got everyone's contact information who's participated. Let's
Yep.
just make sure that they get the chat information back out to them and a
Okay.
recording of what we've done, if that's okay.
Yep, I'll work on that.
Okay, and then just let me know what else you need from me,
Okay,
or if
sounds great.
anyone
Thank you,
else
Kate.
needs anything from me.
Sounds great.
Everybody have a great day.
Yeah. Oh, it's already Friday. Have a great weekend.
All righty, have a great weekend, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Keith.
All right, no problem.